Hey guys, what is going on? This is Travis P11. I want to welcome you back to the channel. Well guys, this is a video that I've wanted to do for about a year now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my long-term report after 10 plus years and over 100,000 miles of Jeep Cherokee Sport, Jeep Cherokee XJ ownership. We're going to cover the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm going to go over absolutely everything that I've had to have replaced on it or repaired. They are great vehicles. They are more or less bulletproof in terms of the drivetrain, but there's a lot of little things you need to look out for. And we're going to cover it. So if you're in the market for one of these Cherokee XJs, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I'm going to miss that you want to look for when you buy one. But it's just like any car when you get it, you want to look for a prior maintenance history. You want to make sure it's not all rusted out and beat up and so on. But these are going up in price. And so if you want to pick one up, you might want to hurry up and get one because they're definitely not going down. I can tell you that. So we're going to start from the very front and work our way to the back, and we'll get into the engine bay a little bit. So if you are seriously considering one of these, I'm not going to get into all the different trim levels or four-wheel drive levels and really not much into the modifications, just what to expect when you buy one, okay? So I bought this Jeep back in October of 2008. I had 109,000 miles on it. I'm currently sitting at just about 212,000 miles on the odometer and basically 10, 11 years of ownership, right? And I've driven this thing through everything. 4 seasons in Nebraska weather, it's just been absolutely wonderful for starters in terms of getting me to where I want to go. There's also, a lot that you don't get with a vehicle like this because we're running, an 18-year-old vehicle, 18-year-old technology, safety features, and so on, but we're not going to really worry about that. So let me just go through absolutely everything that I can think of that I've run into since I bought this vehicle. First of all, we did have the the rear seal replaced where the engine meets the transmission because it was dripping at right when we first got it at 109,000 miles. Well, it's dripping again, and I've got some gaskets and seals that are leaking and dripping, but I've had that problem with 3 different Jeep Cherokees that I've owned, a couple Grand Cherokees, and now this one. It's just something that happens. So up in the front, first things first, you're going to get some fading on the plastic, and I have sanded this off and refinished it and painted it, and I used Rust-Oleum. It's like a bumper and trim replacement paint that they use. I primed it and painted it, and it's held up well for over a year. It's been pretty good considering the winter that we drove through. The headlights up in the front, the headlights are absolutely atrocious. They come with a vehicle. So I've got some replacement Hellas that I bought, and I'll put a link for those. They are completely DOT road legal. The nice thing about them is they use a replacement bulb, kind of like a car. And so you got to take the unit out, but then you can replace the bulb that's behind it. And they're like $7 or $8 for a bulb, and they're much, much brighter than what I used to use before. Very noticeable. And they might be a little bit hazy right now because we just went through the car wash, although you can't really tell. And I do apologize, the engine bay is filthy. I'm just not big on pressure washing engines and so on. So up here in the front, the auxiliary fan has been replaced. Mine was starting to squeal really, really bad, so we got that replaced. I did put a K&N air filter in it, and other than just, regular fluid flushes and fills and stuff like that, transfer case transmission, things like that, really haven't had to have any major maintenance done on it. We did have the radiator pop and start leaking 2 years ago in December, so it does have a new radiator. I'm still on the original alternator, AC compressor, and water pump. Those are all original right now too, which is really good. The AC has had some issues where it'll blow warm for a while, then blow cold and blow warm. I think we got it figured out. We had some, I think it was a change of oil in the compressor, and then also had to add some Freon to it. Again, these are minor items that a lot of people run into, on any vehicle. It isn't necessarily inherent to the Jeeps, okay? But again, just going through what I've done to it. Spark plugs, I've had them changed once or twice, and it's kind of a pain because there's a rail that you have to take off on the side. But at the high school where I teach, I let the garage class, the shop classes do work on this vehicle. They do an awesome job, and they do change those for me. It gives them some experience, and it's just, makes it easier for me because I can not have to worry about trying to find another vehicle. So spark plugs, there's a rail you got to take off that can be a little bit tricky to do, but there are videos on YouTube that show you how to do it. Also, there is a camshaft position sensor, which is located kind of over here behind the firewall off the back of the engine where it goes into the transmission, and it takes a super long extension to change that, and I let the shop class change that also. That can be kind of an expensive fix. I don't know if it's maybe an hour labor from a dealer, although it doesn't really take that long to do. That is something that you want to change that sensor. If you buy one of these and you don't know if it's ever been changed, say you got 150,000 miles on it, just change it, because when it goes, the vehicle just dies. With no rhyme or reason, it just dies altogether. My wife's Grand Cherokee had the exact same problem, and we had to have that one replaced also. I don't really have any misfire issues with it at all like we did with the Grand Cherokee. On this one, it does prefer non-ethanol, 87 octane gas. It's not big on 10% ethanol. I do notice in the summertime, if I run a full tank of 10% ethanol on this thing, I know some of you guys don't have a choice but to use ethanol gas. Here in Nebraska, we don't. We do have a choice. We can use regular non-ethanol gas. It will sometimes idle kind of funny. It'll have kind of some heat soak that'll happen to it when I run that ethanol gas, and when you start it back up. It only happens if it runs really hot, you let it stop, you start it back up like a few minutes later when it's like 80 or 90 degrees out. But again, without the ethanol gas, it never happens. It is the craziest thing. I'm currently dealing with a P0, I believe 234 check engine code, which I believe is a small emissions leak. I've tried replacing the gas cap. I'm pretty sure it's something to do with the lines that go into the charcoal canister as part of the emissions, or it is a solenoid that's not activating properly, so that's something I need to get taken care of this year. Also dealing with the filler neck, or whatever you want to call it, the tube that the oil runs through that goes into the oil filter. That is leaking. There's a gasket that wears out on it, and I'm going to have that changed next fall. It does slowly start to coat the side of your engine with oil, and so that's a problem you can run into. Otherwise, let's see, trying to see here on the front. I think we're pretty solid. Suspension, let's just get that out of the way right now. If you watch my channel, this does have newer, as of last year, shocks and leaf springs all the way around. And we did put some new Milestar Grantland tires on, and the Grantland tires are holding up really well. They've got about 13,000 miles worth of wear on them. So they are kind of taking a little bit of wear, but they've been fantastic going year round. Not so much for mudding and stuff like that, but basic all season year round, they are wonderful. And putting those new shocks on, I went from 1.5 inches of rear clearance from the top of the tire to the bottom of the fender well to 5 inches of lift, and that rake also increased the lift up on the front end too. So that was a really nice thing, you know, kind of gave me a little bit more of a lift, and that makes it even easier for doing oil changes. So that's another cool thing about this. Parts are relatively inexpensive. Oil changes are really easy to do. You do need to watch out because some of these have had heads that fail, and when that happens, it's pretty ugly. You got to basically take the engine apart to replace it. I've never had any kind of head gasket or head failure yet on this. I do have a little bit of lifter chatter, but that's about it, but that's to be expected. So watch for that when you buy one. The engine should sound normal. You shouldn't hear any clanking. Definitely no smoke coming out of the tailpipe. You know, if you got white smoke coming out of the tailpipe, you've got some antifreeze that you're going to be burning, so watch out for that. Rust can be an issue on these things. You want to get underneath the vehicle. You can see I'm starting to get a little bit of rust right here on the door, and there's a little bit of rust underneath the doors, and so that's something that, you know, I could take care of easily. But the rust under the doors, especially if you live in like a salt belt region or a place that uses a lot of salt on the roads, that can cause some problems. The paint on the hood and the roof basically got crow's feet in it. It looks like little crow's feet cracks or bird feet cracks on the paint and the clear coat. So the paint was going. The vehicle got hailed on a couple times 3 summers ago. So I went ahead and just sanded it down and just used a Harbor Freight bed liner on it, which really, check out my videos on that. It's held up well, man. I can throw anything up on the top of this thing and not have to worry about denting it or dinging it or causing any problems. I've had to do just a few little touch-ups here and there from some stuff that I've hauled up on the top of it, but again, it really doesn't look that bad. I've really never had anybody say that it looks terrible, but it does protect it, so expect the paint to maybe not be in such good shape. And that was just something that happened. I mean, I babied this thing, waxed it, washed it, everything, and it did not seem to matter. The paint still started to go. I did pull off the side trim. That is gone because that was getting these like cracks in it, and it was all faded, looked nasty, so we just took it off and basically just, you just basically burn off the adhesive with this round rubber 3M eraser that you can get. It's like a trim eraser on Amazon. So very easy to find that. Okay, moving to the interior. So far the interior's been good. My radio, the original stereo, did have some issues. The volume button, whenever you turn it, it would scratch and squelch or whatever. And so we went in and took it out and just replaced it with an Alpine unit. Nothing too crazy. Otherwise, up in the front end. Oh yeah, the blinker. I did have the blinker relay go out, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube that show you how to change it. It's just under here off to the left. And I got the replacement relay from Advanced Auto Parts for about 12 bucks, and it was really easy to do. Piece of cake. Check out videos on that. Expect that to happen. Over here on the door panel, you will find that the window lock switch will fail. And when that happens at one point or another, you'll notice that there's no other lights on, any other of the switches all the way around in the cabin. And you'll be able to control it from the left side. Most of the time, you can control it up and down, but nobody else can control their locks or windows. So just keep that in mind. I did get an aftermarket replacement from Amazon for about 35 bucks. I've had it for probably 5 years and it's been working like a charm. And I did replace that myself. So again, there is a way that you can test it by going into the wiring harness, but I'll let you to look that up yourself so you don't electrocute yourself. It can be a little bit dangerous if you're not careful, but if you know what you're doing, it does allow you to bypass the lockout switch and test the windows to see if it's the motors or if it is the switch. So I did that, and it turns out it was the switch, so we replaced that. Otherwise, no problems with cruise control. I don't have ABS. Air conditioning is okay for now. Four-wheel drive system has been solid. No problems there whatsoever. I've only gotten it stuck one time, and I don't really want to talk about that. Headliner. Expect a saggy headliner if you find one of these if it's never been replaced. If you ever want to punish your child and it's a weekend, all you got to do is just take the headliner out and take off the felt lining, give them a grill brush, one of those metal grill brushes, and let them go to town scrubbing off the adhesive. It takes hours and hours and hours. And when you're done, you're going to have kind of a fiberglass tub that is the headliner. And you can get some Permatex glue and some fabric. I got this from a Joann's fabric store, which is a headliner cloth. And you can basically replace it yourself. It's not too hard to do. It's kind of a weekend project, but it looks much better than it did before. And I might have just a couple parts that are starting to sag again. But again, this has been about 6 or 7 years since we did that. Let's see, otherwise, moving to the back here, I do have a dog, so we just have a little dog seat in the back. If you put the seats forward on this thing, you have decent hauling area. I mean, I really can't give you a measurement, but you can haul quite a bit, like small furniture, lumber, you know, wood, tools. One of the main things that you're limited on is definitely the rear end, the clearance getting into the back hatch because of the molding and the plastic, and I'll show you that in a second. Not the most comfortable for passengers. It's basically a bench seat, kind of like what you get on a school bus, and you have no headrests. In this particular model, there's no headrests. And I mean, it's okay, but legroom is very, very sparse. With my seats all the way back, your feet are basically pinned underneath the front seat on both sides. So that's something you got to watch out for. It does not make for a very comfortable ride. There are some vents in the middle of the console at the rear. If I didn't have this up, you'd be able to see them. And it does blow cold air to the back, which is nice. So it isn't completely uncomfortable, but it's definitely Spartan, I will say that. Again, like I said, suspension, you know, leaf springs, shocks. If you got saggy rear end going on, you want to take care of that. Also check the exhaust. I'll start this up in a second for you here. I do have a Flowmaster like F44, P44 muffler going on, and it does have a nice rumble to it. Now let's go ahead and pop the back hatch. We'll be right back. And here's just a sample of that Flowmaster exhaust. It's a Flowmaster like P44, I think is what it's called again. Does have a nice rumble to it. Let me rev it up for you real quick. Now, in terms of hauling, I think you're limited to probably, safely without trailer brakes, probably 2,000 pounds. That's probably about it. I don't know what the towing maximum capacity is, but just kind of keep that in mind. And from the hatch, here's what I was talking about earlier. By the way, the paint does scratch and scrape really easily, so kind of keep that in mind if you're looking for one. And you do come with just a donut spare, and I've replaced mine with a full-size spare. The plastic trim, it limits you to, I want to say, about 30 inches of clearance to actually load stuff in the back. I mean, although the roof does kind of taper up, there to be more space, but then you also run into your speakers, which are mounted up here in the ceiling, and those also limit the amount of clearance you have when you're loading stuff in. So when we moved to our house, I mean, I basically use this thing like a little pickup truck. I mean, you've got, you know, almost 5 feet of length, probably 6 feet of length, and at least 3 feet wide without the spare tire in where you can haul stuff. And another issue I ran into, okay, expect your struts, if they've never been replaced before, your little hatch struts to be shot, and I actually got replacements at a parts yard for about 12 bucks a pair. Otherwise, I think they're about 20 bucks a pair. If you need to get some new ones. This is the thing that drives me nuts right here. Chrysler, the bean counters at Chrysler, they left just enough wire to make stuff connect, and that's it. But over time, these connections start to break. And so currently I've got a rear windshield wiper that doesn't work. I was able to resolder and reconnect some of the wires so that I could use my rear defroster, but the rear wiper does not work. And otherwise, but the rear license plate lights, tail lights, no problems whatsoever. Towing was a bit of a problem trying to figure out how to wire this thing up for towing. It did have some sort of a U-Haul tow thing on it at one point, which didn't work with anything new that I tried. So this is just a T-connector that I got off of Amazon, and this will allow you to, get that out for you here, plug in I think it's like a 4-prong connector for a towing system. Okay, 3 female, 1 male. And that's nice because it does go right off the rear wiring harness, so you take off the tire and you just pull the panel out and you're able to put this in here. So this is one way if you do towing, if it doesn't have like a factory tow kit, which mine has a tow bar or a towing setup, but it doesn't have like necessarily the factory towing kit. It was never pre-wired for towing, and so this does give you an option. I think I paid like maybe 20 bucks for this on Amazon. It wasn't a bad deal, but it's there because we're always hooking a trailer up to this thing to haul stuff around too. But otherwise, man, I love the sound of the new exhaust, and it just runs like a champ. Really no main complaints otherwise, just a lot of little maintenance items. And really, honestly, a lot of the problems that I started having with it didn't start showing up till probably about the 175,000 mile range. Once I got to about 175, 190, that's when I started to have little things start to go out. Like I said, that sensor on the camshaft and the auxiliary fan, the radiator. Suspension had just been slowly getting worse as time had gone on. But I mean, otherwise she's still on the road, she still runs. Mileage, with these tires, I can get about 22 miles per gallon if I'm going 65 miles an hour. It doesn't really matter if I've got the air on or not. I mean, you've got the aerodynamics of a shoebox, so that's pretty much what you're limited to for mileage. Worst mileage in the wintertime, I'm looking at probably 11, 12 miles per gallon, maybe 15, 16 on the highway. Kind of depends if I'm running defroster, if I got a lot of people in the car or not. So you're not, for what you save overall buying one of these things versus say a new Wrangler, you're gonna, you definitely got the money for gas at that point, but don't buy it thinking that you're gonna be getting a hybrid by any stretch. But otherwise, man, I absolutely love it. It's been a rugged, wonderful vehicle. I've driven it through all sorts of weather, climate, driven it all over the country. It's just been a blast to drive, and I don't ever want to get rid of it. So I'm hoping that the engine and transmission stay solid. Only thing that's a little bit disappointing is the cost of a rebuilt engine for this. I'm seeing somewhere around $2,500, $2,500, almost $2,700 for a long block. And compared to say like a 350, you can get those for, maybe about half the price, around $1,500, $1,700. So it's a little bit pricey if you have to look into replacement engines and transmissions for this, but they're plentiful. That straight six is all over the place. You can probably find one in a parts yard fairly easily, and you can get replacements out there. So guys, that's basically it. I just wanted to cover all the basics of long-term Cherokee ownership, what to expect. The ride is actually very comfortable with those Monroe Spectrum shocks and those Dorman leaf springs on the back there. It's not uncomfortable at all. It can definitely handle the rough stuff. But you are reminded, that it is an SUV. It is unibody, though, which does help out a little bit, too, with just kind of overall comfort and feel. But otherwise, I wouldn't really trade it for anything else, and so I'll keep driving it till she dies. So that's it. All right, guys, I hope you like my little video of long-term Jeep Cherokee Sport ownage, Jeep Cherokee XJ ownership. And, guys, please like or subscribe. And otherwise, I think that's about it. So, yeah, y'all have fun. Y'all be safe. And as you know, we will talk to you soon. All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.